Hey, what's up, everybody? And welcome to your Tuesday edition of the Post Up with David Grubb right here on Boot Crew Media. I, of course, am your host, David Grubb. Glad to be with you on this rainy Tuesday. First of all, thank you to everybody who wished me a happy birthday yesterday. I really appreciate it. Like I said, 50 years old, man. I'm 50 plus plus one day. So it's a bit of an adjustment, it's one of those milestone days. But what I did forget to do yesterday was acknowledge the birthday of one of my favorite art forms, and that's hip hop music. Born 2 years before I was in 1973 on the same day. Well, that's the acknowledged birthday for Kool Herc and his first hip hop jam. So everything came from that. And what's cool, is having your birthday on something like that and knowing that it's this milestone in American history and music history. And, my t-shirt game is one of my things. I love my t-shirts. And this one is one of my favorites because I made this one and I just got it. It's from Rakim, the God MC. And he was at Tipitina's not too long ago. And I was there, and this picture is of him on stage. And it's just a silhouette of him holding up his mic. And so it's just, it means something to me. I finally got to see him. I had never seen him. And, one of the greatest MCs of all time, the father of real in-depth lyricism. Everybody who came after him learned from him. And it's just, I just want to acknowledge that because I love hip hop music and it's on my birthday. And, there's some other cool people that are born on my birthday and things like that, like Viola Davis and Chris Hemsworth and the late Hulk Hogan, if you want to talk about him. But hip hop music been such an integral part of my life. And I think it's such an integral part of the NBA at this stage. Every sport is kind of associated with the music. The NFL gets, rock and roll. College football is certainly country music as it goes, you watch game day or whatever. And I think the NBA is certainly associated with hip hop music at this stage. So, these things go together. But I just wanted to mention that off the top. The first topic today, it was interesting. I was just going through YouTube last night, scrolling as you do. And I ran across this segment on the Golden State Warriors and the impact of Steve Kerr. And I really got interested in it because there's been this lot of discussion about, is Steve Kerr a good coach? Did he just benefit from timing and getting, Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green at the right time? And this is relevant because of the Pelicans' consistent problems on offense. And this is the part that stuck out to me because they interviewed guys like Draymond Green and, Klay and all these guys who were there that first year when Steve Kerr took over. And what Draymond was talking about was like when they first started practicing under Steve, he would keep stopping the practices. And it was like they weren't passing the ball quickly enough. He wanted the ball to move. And if you know Willie Green, since he became the head coach, he's talked about this 0.5 mentality. Well, that's the same thing that they institute in Golden State. That's the same way they operate in Golden State. And so the difference that I saw was the level of accountability that Steve Kerr had in instituting that offense. He would continue to stop practice over and over again if he thought the ball was not moving quickly enough. He would continue to point it out. The ball has to move. The ball has to move. And Draymond said that at one point he went and questioned Steve, and he was like, how are we going to get the ball to Steph? How are we going to get the ball to Klay? They got to have the ball to score points. And if we're just moving the ball, how are those guys going to get it in the right place? And Steve Kerr simply told him, the ball will find the open person if you move it. If you keep moving the basketball, it will get to the right person and the right shot will be taken. But if we're stagnant, that won't happen. Certainly, we saw what happened with the Warriors offense, and people continue to think that it's just about the three-point shot. It is not just about the three-point shot. It's how you generate the three-point shot. It's how you generate the other shots. The Warriors took shots in the mid-range when they first started winning championships. You had Andre Iguodala and Sean Livingston who were masters of the mid-range shot. So it wasn't just all threes. It's about the system. When you saw the Pelicans play the Warriors in those 2 games last season early on, when they were on the West Coast, what did you see? You saw the Warriors without some of their starters continuing to cut, screen, move the ball quickly and effectively. And you've never seen that type of discipline from the New Orleans Pelicans. I think as a media member, and I think as fans too, you've often wondered, where is the accountability, not only on the court during games, but in practice? Because you practice how you play. Every coach will tell you that from the minute you pick up a ball to play basketball, football, whatever. You practice how you play. And so this kind of emphasis that the Warriors were talking about in the strict nature of their practices, it leads to some questions about the translation between Steve Kerr and Willie Green, who was on his staff. Why has it not worked in instituting basically the same offensive principles? And to me, the only answer, because you can't say that it's illogical to think that all 12 players, all 15 players, whatever on the roster, are all disregarding the instructions of the head coach if they have been properly emphasized and people are holding them accountable. Coaches typically, if you don't do what they ask you to do, what do? Pull you out of the game. And you can say, well, the Pelicans can't pull people because they don't have enough talent. When you were winning 42 games, you had enough talent. When you had 49 wins, you had enough talent. But you never saw the kinds of stops during the game that said, hey, keep moving the basketball. You hear it in postgame. You hear it at halftime from the coaches talking about, we got to move the basketball. We got to move the basketball. How has this persisted for 4 years? And so that level of accountability is something that has to happen for the Pelicans this season. And you wonder, because of the type of players on this roster, is Jordan Poole going to move the ball quickly? Is DeJounte Murray, when he returns, going to move the ball quickly and cut and screen off ball? Zion Williamson, his role is different, obviously, in the half court when you got him going downhill. But when he's not open, he's got to move the ball quickly. I think Trey and Herb are good at that. Herb, in particular, is great at moving the ball quickly. He makes his reads. And again, like I said, he's very quick as far as either shooting it, driving it, or passing it. And so that's the mentality of Herb Jones, is really where everybody has to get as far as being conduits to consistently move the basketball. This team is not good enough with one particular ball handler to say you're going to consistently break down the defense over and over again. Jordan Poole can do that for himself really well. Trey Murphy has shown signs of that, but the best way to get those guys their shots, Trey Murphy, Jordan Poole, all those things, if the ball is consistently moving, because what do? You get the defense out of position. People are constantly in chase. You don't allow them to set their feet. And when you do that, you give yourself opportunities to cut around the perimeter and to cut towards the basket and give yourself driving lanes. And that's where the Pelicans have to get. Pass the basketball. You know, you always hear this thing too about the Pelicans, they count the number of assists, and that's great. But again, how are you getting those assists? Are they just direct passes to somebody in transition? Are you getting them in the half court off of penetration? Are you getting them off of just one pass and one shot? There are too many possessions that you see with the Pelicans when it's 2 passes or less, and then a shot goes up. You know, you got to take on that hickory high mode from Hoosiers. 5 passes on every possession, unless you've got an early shot at the first 7 or 8 seconds of the shot clock. Ball's got to move. So let's see if the Pelicans can add that to their repertoire this year. Learn the lessons finally that have been taught by the Golden State Warriors. The basketball's got to move. Yesterday, I just said yesterday that it had been a quiet offseason for Zion Williamson. Quiet. And then all of a sudden, 2 things have come out in the last 24 hours regarding Zion Williamson. First was the picture. There was a picture of him this offseason. He's got his shirt open. He's got a gold chain on. He's wearing sunglasses. And people are like, oh, look at Zion. He's out there. He never shows anybody working. I don't care if I see his workouts. I really don't. I've seen Herb's workouts. I've seen Trey's workouts. I've seen DeJounte. You don't have to do that for me. I never saw Kobe Bryant work out. I never saw Michael Jordan work out. I never saw Patrick Ewing work out. Never saw Larry Bird work out. I don't care to see your workouts. The only thing I did notice from pictures, he still looks in shape. He looks in shape to me. If he is in shape, if he isn't, he better just show up on time, show up in shape when training camp starts. Hopefully he goes to the optional, team training camp with just the players in LA. And we'll see about that. But that was the first thing. And then today, somebody throws out this thing and says, oh, Zion has unfollowed the Pelicans on Instagram. Is he asking out of New Orleans? Turns out that wasn't true. But the problem is, again, here we go with this Zion speculation. And I know folks are sitting there going, this is what they do to New Orleans until they drive the players out. And again, I would say, if you had access to Zion, and I know it's a difficult time, but there have been I don't need to see his workouts, but I would love to talk to him. 5 minutes. I could do an interview with Zion in 5 minutes, and I think I would get some information out of him. And I'm not saying that because I'm so great. I'm just saying, like, I think I could have a good conversation with him. I think the young man, and the times that I've spoken to him and the times that he's engaged me, if you ask him a fair question, he'll answer it. He doesn't like to talk very long, but if you ask him a fair question, he'll answer it. And I think I could be fair. And I'm not saying just for me, somebody else could too. But I think that if I were Zion, I would have a conversation. And yeah, he could say it a million times. He could say, I want to be in New Orleans for the rest of my career. And there are people who will never believe him. He could say, I'm fully committed to basketball. And there's people who would never believe him. But as somebody who's worked in advertising and public relations, whether it's been in the private sector, the public sector, politics as well, I tell you, messaging and consistency in messaging is very important. And so far, the consistent message in Zion Williamson's career is that he doesn't really have an interest in communicating with the public. You know, you've never really seen, outside of those first 2 years when people were like, why is he doing commercials and he's not playing? Well, he backed off the commercials. You don't see Zion out there doing commercials. You don't see Zion out there doing a lot of publicity. And I think that's now a detriment to him. Like this year, if you're planning on this year to be the year that everything starts to rebound, I would love to see Zion come out now and kind of declare that, hey, this is what we're going to do this year. And even if it doesn't happen, just again, take that role publicly of ownership as far as the team's successes and failures. You know what I mean? Like, I think that would be a good step forward in rehabbing his image. I don't want to ask him any questions about his lawsuit. That ain't my business. There's legal reporters who do that stuff. And there's plenty of time for that stuff to get adjudicated. But that is a civil matter that got nothing to do with me. I do want to ask him about his on-court stuff. I do want to ask him about his relationship with the Pelicans. I do want to ask him about what he's learned so far over these 6 years and how is this year going to be different. I want to hear it from him. And I want to hear it in a way that's one-on-one, because when you are in a situation, in a scrum of reporters, you're just trying to get to the next question so you can be done. But if we're having a decent conversation and I'm not interrogating him, I'm having a conversation with him, I think we're going to get more insight. And in this era of the way we view our athletes and our public figures in general, one of the most important things that fans want is some level of connectivity. I don't want access to Zion Williamson 24/7. I don't want to know what he's doing on a day-to-day basis. But as the public face of the New Orleans Pelicans, I would like to see him converse with the media a little bit more. We'll see if that happens. But again, it's just weird, the coincidences of talking about Zion and saying it was quiet and then having these two things pop over the last 24 hours. But let's get to the main thing today. I want to have some fun with this. Like I said, it's the off season, so the topics are not as important right now. Let's have some fun with basketball. And what I wanted to do was give you my all-time Pelicans team, Pelicans/Hornets, and who I think the 10 best players in franchise history have been, and assembling those teams in that regard. So, we have a first team, we have a second team. This is not for arguing. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want anybody to come to me and want to fight me over this. This is my opinion. I welcome yours. Put your lists in the comments below. I'll talk about some of them if they're dramatically different from mine. But I'm going to lay out my case. If you agree, cool. If you don't, also cool. Like I said, give me the feedback in the comments below. Send them to me. You can put them on social media. You can tag me on Twitter, whatever. I will look at them. This is just my thought. In the years that I've observed this team, the 23 years that they've been on the court, 24 years they've been on the court, this is my view. I was, there the first season. I didn't go to the first game, but I was there the first season. I've watched this team consistently, and these are just my opinions. So I hope you like them, and let's go to it. All right. So when we talk about the first team, the all-time Hornets/Pelicans, I don't think there's any doubt that I would start with Chris Paul, who is undeniably the best player as far as accolades and achievements in the history of this franchise. When you look at Chris Paul, you're talking about a guy who is still the all-time assist leader for the New Orleans Pelicans, averaged almost 19 points, 10 assists and more than 2 steals per game. He was a rookie of the year. He had multiple top 5 MVP finishes in New Orleans, finished in the top 10 and defensive player of the year voting twice, made an NBA first team and an NBA second team, a defensive first team and a defensive second team while he was with New Orleans, and still holds the team record for win shares. And it's not particularly close when it comes to that. Anthony Davis is second, but Chris Paul has a good margin over AD, and certainly AD has no chance to catch Chris Paul at this point. 425 games in his career, and that shows you again how good Chris Paul really was in his career for a guy who averaged 18.7 points to still be in that top 2-3 when it comes to the franchise's all-time scoring list. At the 2-guard spot, I want to go with Jrue Holiday. The 2-guard has probably been the most difficult position for the Pelicans to fill over the years. And Jrue Holiday, I think, is by far and away the best 2-guard the Pelicans have had over a consistent number of years. 18 points, 7 assists, 1.5 steals for Jrue in his Pelicans career. Maybe the second best defensive player is certainly, I think, either way, like on the perimeter, he'd be second probably to Chris. If you think about the young Chris Paul compared to who he is now, if you're thinking about Anthony Davis as the best defensive player of his era, Jrue is right behind AD in that regard. And then you'd put him, I guess, Chris Paul, Anthony Davis, Herb Jones, Jrue Holiday, somewhere in those mix. Those 4 guys would be the best individual defenders, I think, in the history of this franchise. So for Jrue Holiday, a fan favorite, a guy who came to work, with his hard hat, very silent guy, but a guy who was loved in the community, loved by the team, and certainly deserving of that 2-guard spot. As small forward, this is the hardest position for me because I think that, again, this was a position that has been a struggle for the Pelicans to fill over the years. These 2 positions, shooting guard and small forward, have the fewest number of candidates for greatness in this franchise. Brandon Ingram, though, you cannot deny the offensive ability that he showed in New Orleans and the accolades that he did win. A 1-time All-Star, a most improved player, those types of things in New Orleans. 23 points, 5.5 boards, 5 assists in 300 games with the Pelicans. So I think he does get the nod. When you look at his ranks as far as the 3-point shooting, when you look at assists, when you look at points, Brandon is offensively one of the most gifted players who ever played for the Pelicans. And was on the team that got the only 2 playoff wins of the Zion Williamson era. He was the leader of that team in that regard. So you give Brandon Ingram his due. David West, to me, is so underrated by fans of the New Orleans Pelicans, of the New Orleans Hornets. The first draft pick ever in New Orleans, a guy who's still in the top 5 in all-time rebounds for the Pelicans, all-time points for the Pelicans, games played, all those things. Mr. Hornet, I guess. David West, 2 All-Star appearances, tying, him for one of the few players behind Anthony Davis to have multiple All-Star appearances. I think he got Zion Williamson, Chris Paul, and David West are the only other players on this team to make more than 1 All-Star team while with the Pelicans or Hornets. And so for David West, I think, the dependability, he was part of the most successful team in franchise history. He and Chris Paul, an all-star duo in consecutive years. So you got to give a lot of credit to David West, whose number I think should be in the rafters in New Orleans. I think obviously Chris Paul's number should be up there. I think Jrue's number could be up there, but all these guys, 4 of these guys, I don't think Brandon Ingram should have his jersey retired just because he didn't have enough winning. You got to have some winning in there. The Pelicans just didn't have enough winning during Brandon's tenure. But all these other guys, Chris Paul won at least 1 playoff series, obviously. Jrue Holiday won a playoff series. Brandon Ingram did not. David West won a playoff series. Anthony Davis won a playoff series. So I think those are important. And the number of games played matter too. All those guys are above 400. Brandon played 300. So I think that's the edge for me. But Anthony Davis, yeah. I mean, whether we like how he left or not, you can't deny his impact as the second best player in the history of this franchise to date. 24 points, 11 rebounds, 2 blocks per game, multiple All-Star appearances, including an All-Star MVP. He led the league in blocks. He was Rookie of the Year. Finished second in Rookie of the Year. Defensive Player of the Year, finished in the top 10 several times with the Pelicans. Again, multiple-time All-Star, finished in the top 10 in MVP voting 4 times in New Orleans, the most of any player to get those many top 5 finishes while with the Pelicans. Again, you have to look. Anthony Davis also led the league in 2-point shots made 4 times while he was with the New Orleans, and in field goals made in a season, led the NBA twice. So it's undeniable. Look, you can't, no matter what, you can't kick him out of the history of the franchise. You can't talk about the history of this franchise without talking about Anthony Davis. That's the first team. Again, if you disagree with the first team, put that in the comments below. Please be respectful. All right. Just please be respectful. This is just basketball. We don't have to be, rude to each other in the comments. So let's just do that. Be respectful. The second team. All right. Second team, we start with Baron Davis at the point guard spot. Not a long career in New Orleans, only 3 seasons for B. Diddy. But Baron Davis was one of the most exciting players to play in New Orleans. You go ahead and you talk about 20 points, 4 boards, 7 assists, all-star appearance, took the Pelicans to the playoffs where he lost to the Miami Heat. Certainly some controversy when the Hornets moved to New Orleans, but Baron was undeniable. He was box office. One of the most athletic point guards in NBA history. He just was entertaining to watch play and was an intense competitor as well. He was the one constant. Jamal Mashburn was out of the lineup. He was out of the lineup too. Missed a lot of games, but he was there more than Jamal Mashburn, more than Jamal McGlure, more than a lot of those guys early on. And while David West was still underachieving as a rookie those first couple of years, then it was on Baron Davis to really carry that team. Shooting guard CJ McCollum. Not a lot of games. Again, only 200 games. That's what you notice that about this group. These are all players who did not play a huge amount of games, but had big impact in their short terms. CJ McCollum, 21 points, 4 rebounds, shot almost 40% from 3 in his New Orleans career, the all-time leader in 3-point buckets made, played on multiple playoff teams, and was the leading scorer, for the Pelicans one season. So when you look at CJ and what he was able to do as far as like the number of games played and what he's able to do, I think it's hard to deny that CJ belongs on the all-time second team. We'll see who you guys have maybe in that spot. It's small forward. Maybe my most controversial pick, because I think you could have gone for, somebody could have said Peja Stojakovic. Maybe you bring somebody else into that. But for my money, I'm going to go with Trey Murphy because of what we've seen already from Trey. Has a 20-point season under his belt, 38% 3-point percentage. I think 3rd or 4th right now, in 3-point field goals made, already in the top 10 in Pelicans all-time scoring. So I think Trey, by the time it's all all is done, Trey Murphy will be the franchise's, I think, will be the best small forward overall by the time it's done. I think he'll surpass Brandon Ingram, and I think Trey will be the best small forward in the history of the Pelicans, but we shall see. Zion Williamson, again, Zion only 214 games, but 25 points, 7 boards, 5 assists in his Pelicans career, 2 all-star appearances. So for Zion, we know he may be the most physically gifted and talented player that this franchise has ever had. But until he accomplishes the things at least some of the things that you expected out of him when he arrived, I don't think you can move him any higher than the second team. And the last one at center, this could be a little controversial. There will be people who pick PJ Brown. There'll be people who pick DeMarcus Cousins. There'll be people who pick Jonas Valanciunas. And all of those are legitimate players to pick. I took Tyson Chandler for this reason. For the years that Tyson Chandler played, 3 seasons, 197 games. Tyson Chandler was one of the best defensive players in the NBA. He rebounded the ball incredibly well on both ends of the floor. The part of the Crescent City connection with Chris Paul, Chris threw it up, Tyson finished it. And he was the franchise's, as far as rebounding average, he was the guy until Anthony Davis arrived. When it came to block shots, he was the guy until Anthony Davis arrived. There was no better interior defender in the history of the franchise than Tyson Chandler until Anthony Davis arrived. He averaged a double-double with the Pelicans. He was impactful. And I think that the attempt to trade Tyson was the nail in the coffin for that iteration of the New Orleans Hornets. Once they did that, the trust was broken with that team between Tyson, Chris Paul, and David West. And then they didn't want to sign David West, and the franchise went into the dark ages until Anthony Davis was drafted. But that's my top 10 players. Again, for the first team, Chris Paul, Drew Holiday, Brandon Ingram, David West, and Anthony Davis. And then on the second team, Baron Davis, CJ McCollum, Trey Murphy, Zion Williamson, and Tyson Chandler. Again, I would love to get your feedback. Go ahead and drop that below. Tell me what you think. If you agree, if you disagree, I'd love to hear from you. All right. But again, it's just my opinion, and that's fun to have, right? Opinions are great. All right, hold on. Let me just move this out of the way. Bing. And here I am. And now let's pull up the screen again. You know, I'm old, people. I got to learn my technical stuff sometimes. Got to redo it. All right. So that was the first team. That was the second team. And that's going to do it for today. That's plenty of basketball conversation for this Tuesday. We'll be back again on Thursday. NBA schedule's coming out, so we'll be able to talk about that, particularly the first 10 games. Remember, the first 10 have proven to be very important for the Pelicans / Hornets over the years. So we shall see what the schedule says to us. Until then, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, comment, share, and hit the notification bell as well. And you can follow me on social media at DM Grubb, whether you're talking about Twitter, Instagram, you can find me on Facebook, you can find me on TikTok, and you can find me on Blue Sky. I hope y'all have a great one. I'm David Grubb. You hear you. This has been the Post Up on Boot Crew Media. See you Thursday. All right.